we just split the fields on an angle, so we can just use the same gate to pivot the other way. When they're in at the pond sometime, we'll just move the gateway and they'll go into here. And we're here for 3 days in this paddock. And then they went to the far one down the road. They skipped this next one. We put an alleyway through it. So they had to come back up to the pond here for water. So they went to the far one next for about 5 days and then came back to the middle one. And the middle one got grazed probably a day too long. So it's got what, 4 days of regrowth in it now? Something like 4 or 5 days.
Weekend casualty.
Right, yeah, there you go, yeah. So, and then when we brought them back into it, we just rolled up that portion of the alleyway and let them in it. So you can see when they travel the alleyway, they graze this over and over and over and over as they're coming through. So this is the victim of that as well. So here we've got about just a hair over 2 weeks worth of regrowth. In the next paddock over, we're just working on about 4 or 5 days worth of regrowth. And as you head back, when we go for lunch, we're actually going past these paddocks, so you can take a glance at the furthest one that will now have about 10 days of regrowth. And so what we've done now, so that the steers, I don't know if they were still up there when you came down into town and which way you came into town, but it's a group of black steers that were just up at the top of the hill at the road coming into town.
Right by the curling.
Right by the curling club, if anybody noticed that. We've now brought them, Nick, before, or as people were arriving, brought them across beyond the bush and down through the pond area and up along the road. And now they've got an alleyway to the field that's it was a previous hay field. No, it was a new seeding. We seeded it last year. We've got an alleyway going to it, coming back to the same pond area. So we have 3 ponds on this property. Dugouts rather. They're not natural ponds, they're man-made dugouts. They kind of go in a line straight over the hill. This one, there's one on top of the hill and then there's one down at the bottom. And so as the pastures rotate, they rotate to the different dugouts. In an ideal world, and at some point I'm hoping we get to where we have a pumping system out of each of the dugouts so that the dugouts stay cleaner, last longer, and that the water that they're consuming is cleaner. But Rome wasn't built in a day, so that's work in progress, because also with a system like this, we have to be able to move it obviously frequently and to different types of dugouts. So it has to be very portable and a large enough tank system that 112 steers in this case don't drain it and move it. So there's always challenges, and it's magnified with a bigger group. In Silverwater, we have a 300 head group, and water volume delivered quickly becomes even bigger issue. So we haven't been able to tackle that one yet either. They were on a dugout system in Silverwater as well for those steers. The power feed on this farm is this fence here, and right now the gate is open. But if we'd have this gate open and the gate open, then there would be no power. So when Nick moved them, he just brought them down over the hill and then funneled them in here. And this is then their alleyway to get back to the pond. And then to rotate them, we just split the fields on an angle, so we can just use the same gate to pivot the other way. When they're in at the pond sometime, we'll just move the gateway and they'll go into here. So obviously you see it was underseeded with some clovers, but we also, normally we don't put a lot of perennial ryegrass, for example, in our hay mixtures. We do put a little bit in, but this one had more perennial ryegrass in it because our intention was to graze it. So this is the first season it's been grazing, and so it hasn't filled out. Obviously some spots here where there's been traffic from the first grazing that are a little more bare, but this isn't nearly as thick as where we were at the other side of the driveway, where that's a far more established stand. So yeah, so this is just let in here this morning, and they'll be here. We're not, because we want to get them to the other side of the road, this won't get grazed as much. We'll just probably take the top off, leave them in here for a few days. That side hasn't regrown as well as this side, so there'll be even less on that side. And then across to the road first of the week to test our new fence. I see there's a few that haven't made it down here, so we'll have to set the fence back up for them to come in here. It was a little thin, so we frost seeded some clover this spring. And Nick was saying the first grazing allowed the red clover really to take, like to thin it out and let the clover take, because there's a fair bit of clover in here now.